you know, even if, there's a, Black Lives Matter recently made apparent their platform, which they refer to Israel as being apartheid. And there's pushback within some Jewish communities saying, no, it's not apartheid because. And one of the things I was looking at in both of these circumstances is there's a lot of talk about what we are not, but not a whole lot of what we are. So sometimes you have to, it's one thing to go on and on about what you will not stand for, what you will not do, but where are you on this topic? So, for example, if my shul does not want to support the entity that has become Black Lives Matter because of their platform, however, they do want to support Black lives, especially Jewish Black lives, that is something that they can still be active in. So racism, systemic racism can still be addressed. And so a couple of ideas were put forward to one of the rabbis from me, like, okay, well, we can do this, we can do this, and he said, I would love to see that happen, and, you know, on and on. So a seed has been planted, is already germinated, and this will take place. So in answer to your question, typically it's pushback, I think, which is not so much a policy. We don't have a policy of pushback, it's just something we do naturally. Probably because of our community where we came together to challenge issues and to address these challenging issues and try to make changes and, yes, bring them out into our worlds. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but I haven't seen any particular policy, but individual approaches, I've seen plenty of those.
On this question?
Yeah.
Okay, let's keep focusing on this and then we'll take a quick break.
Yeah. Why don't we just, those of us who have something to say, comment, if you want to?
Okay, I was just going to say that we do still have to, you know, not only like try to find another, so the movement for Black Lives released this platform, and there are some Jewish organizations that have been discounting the entire movement for Black Lives because of basically 11 words, you know, because of just a couple of points that are mentioned, and one of them is apartheid and one of them is genocide, and this and you can't just discount those words and say, you know, so first of all, these organizations should not be completely discounting the movement for Black Lives, and yet also you have to acknowledge, like, well, how are, like, at least apartheid, how else are you going to describe the situation? You know, looking at, you know, it's a, you know, and yet I do know that there is this kind of like pushback. But if you look at the definition of the word apartheid, and then you look at what's going on, it's kind of hard to avoid using that term. And that's something where I feel, and you know, so that's sometimes a little hard to navigate that question of like, well, what terms should we be using if you really don't want to use that term?
So it's more than just Black Lives Matter, that to also address what is actually happening in Israel and Palestine. Am I understanding correctly?
Yes, exactly.
Gotcha.
And yet, while also saying that, you know, that we need to be fighting for Black lives, and also how
the occupation,
right, and also how tied together the Palestinian liberation is with liberation in the United States of people of color. So,
so as a community of about 25 people, you know, we don't all think alike, obviously. And so we are evolving, you know, now about 8 years. And I like to think that we've reached a point where each and every one of us believes that there should be universal human rights and that we should strive for it, irregardless of any demographic or condition whatsoever. I don't think we've quite gotten there. And one way this made itself evident to me was this week, and it was a conversation about, so I sent an email saying that I had read, I read on the UN Wire that the president of the United Nations General Assembly was going to court for an $800,000 bribe. And then that link came to an AP story, an Associated Press story, saying that the president of the UNGA had just died of, well, there were conflicting reports. A heart attack and a set of barbells that fell on his mouth. So then I followed the next story, and it said that he was about to implicate Hillary Clinton in something. Okay, now at that point, everything that is like real facts is out the window. Okay, it was, I mean, up to that point, okay, it was something like something substantial for investigation. I didn't see anything that really tied Hillary Clinton in substantially, but it was floating out there. So I sent an email to everyone, and then someone had emailed back, you know, this is not a time to stack the deck against Hillary. We need pretty much to support Hillary against Trump. Now, for those who are oppressed, whether they are Palestinians or, you know, blacks under the legacy of yes, the list goes on, whether it's from you know, the war on drugs from the Clinton legacy, or the war of militarism that the Secretary of State Clinton has done, the destruction of Libya, et cetera, et cetera. So my response was, well, if we're thinking of, are we as a community on a page where we collectively want to continue to consider transforming the government, or do we believe that we need to dismantle it? So to answer your question, we're trying to get there, and I think we're nudging in the direction of dismantling, but it's, yeah.
I don't want to interrupt Susan.
I'm done. Thank you.
I think these are such huge questions that I'm so glad that, you know, people are bringing up and we're talking about. And I just have two sort of short, I'll try to be short contributions to it. One is kind of trying to tie together what you were saying about, like, it's not really enough to just celebrate, like, religions and similarities in religions, you know, to what you were asking in terms of what's our method, you know what I mean? One of the things that I do think is unique about how the community of living traditions approaches things, and it's in the name, is that we try to value traditions, you know what I mean? Meaning, and that's a controversial thing to say on the left, right? Because I don't know, you know, if anybody's read the text of the International, it kind of like implies that that's not really helpful. So like there's a long history of like not wanting to, you know, to give the boot to traditions for some very good reasons, right? We have the working assumption that it's helpful to value traditions and to do and to engage with the process by which people people's lives are shaped through traditions. You know, like there are, like, you know, the amount of people who have substantive like biographical links to like one or more religious tradition in the world is like it's like times and times and times more than people who don't. So if you say you care about people, you know what I mean? Like it makes sense to actually want to actually hear like what people are saying about their faith journeys. You know what I mean? And so we kind of try to take that seriously, and that for me does very much involve a perspective that I would say is both anti-racist and anti-elitist. You know what I'm saying? Like, because a lot of religion is used as resistance in ways that maybe might not be immediately evident to people who aren't like in that exact position. So like, you know, we have to be willing to like hear people, like really hear people like from the heart, and we do that with each other, to hear each other. You know what I mean? Now that doesn't mean that religion doesn't also come, the traditions come up with a lot of baggage, and that's exactly what we're trying to, that's the problem we're trying to place on the table here. Like, you know what I mean? And we haven't figured it all out. So, you know, but definitely, we also are constantly trying to address the aspects of religion that make us more racist, that make us more inclined to apologize for systemic, brutality. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's like, that's like core to, why do any of this if you're not gonna push on those? And I hope that that's evident by like, well, you're seeing us trying to do that, but we're still midstream in that process, so we value your feedback. I would like to say one other thing about the idea of traditions, and that's that it's not just religions that are traditions.
No.
You know what I mean? Like, there are other traditions, and like movements are traditions. You know what I mean? Like, also, you know what I mean? And so recently we established like a practice in our community of giving an award to an activist or an activist group in our our region who we feel like embodies like this idea of like the values of that we're trying to kind of raise up through the community of living traditions, and we call it the Living Tradition Award. And like the first, I felt extremely proud of our community that the first person we chose to get that award wasn't like a person who was overly identified with religion, but it was a person from the Black Power movement, a person who's his name is Jalal Sabur, and he's doing this like a fascinating like integrative work between food justice and prison solidarity and political prisoner support work. And it's like, and he came and he accepted the award, and he gave this beautiful speech about the evolution of the Black Power movement as a tradition, as a living tradition. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so like for me, that's like one of the ways that we're working against racism systemically is not just to like allow, it's not just imperial religions that get to be called traditions. You know what I mean? Like other communities of resistance also get to be called traditions and need to be valued just as like seriously. So I don't know, but I hope that's helpful.
Is it on this? Really, really quick?
Yeah, I
We need a
just,
break.
oh yeah, just briefly, so one thing was, so the other two awards that we've given out are, one was to a woman who's part of peace walking across the country from the, she's Japanese and she's part of a tradition that's peace walking against nuclear weapons and for peace around the world. And then this year we're giving an award to the Rampo Lenape Nation, which is, as a whole, which is the indigenous community that lives about 20 miles from us, that has been struggling to get acceptance as a tribe nationally, and has also been dealing with lots of issues of contamination that happened in the 70s from Ford Motor Company and a whole bunch of other problems. But we're honoring, and we went down with them to the climate march in Philadelphia before the DNC. So that's, just acknowledging those things as well.
Okay, so we've been going for an hour and a half, and we still have 45 minutes to our time, but I'm just thinking that if everybody had maybe 5 minutes